order to like mitigate the topic, and that is because it is considered a taboo in a lot of societies, and it speaks to a certain societal convention. So if a linguist were to give a new insight into the relationship between language and menstruation, it actually shows the cognitive and social implications behind such choices. So if you see the background, now Sri Lanka is an island nation, and it has women make up about 51.6% of the population, and 55.7 million are of the reproductive age. And it also boasts a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multilingual society, leading to a diverse population. So this again contributes to how menstruation is conceptualized in different ways, because Sri Lanka has different religions and different languages that's spoken. And a lot of times the discussion of menstruation within Sri Lanka follows the topics, conventional topics of period poverty and menstrual hygiene. That is what's mostly spoken about. And although there have been studies, like for example in Anuradhapura there was a study that was into period poverty, and they have acknowledged that along with economic constraints, even cultural shame and stigma contributes to the lack of menstrual hygiene. And there was another one in Sabaragamuwa province, and in there also there was this study that talks about how open discourse can help to create a more accommodating environment in order for people who experience menstruation. So these are all topics about period poverty and menstrual hygiene, and within the Sri Lankan context there's actually no study that shows the relationship between language and menstruation. So, which is my statement of problem. So the conventional academic discourse surrounding menstruation in Sri Lanka generally follows the medical route or economic difficulties such as period poverty. And while it has been acknowledged superficially that such a concept is considered a taboo within Sri Lankan society and in many studies, there isn't actually a dedicated study that has taken the time to examine the perpetuation through language and its taboo nature and the cognitive and social implications behind the choice of this language. So my research questions are, what are the linguistic conceptualizations used by Sri Lankan women to pertain to the notion of menstruation? What's their language use? And my second question is, how can the conceptual metaphor theory, which I will explain in a bit, be used to interpret the linguistic conceptualizations employed by Sri Lankan women? And the third question is, how does the social, cultural, ethnic and religious environment in Sri Lanka influence how menstruation is linguistically conceptualized? And my fourth question is, what does the extremistic nature of these linguistic conceptualizations say about the different mitigation levels? For example, now extremistic, it means like there are three different categories of euphemisms. One is euphemisms, which means that you talk about something vaguely in a positive way. Okay, and the second is euphemism, which means you talk about something in a negative manner. And then there's autophonism, which means you talk about something in a neutral manner. So these are the different mitigation levels in which I will study. So these are my literature reviews. So the first one is a book, which is the Everyday Discourses of Menstruation by Newton, and she talks in her book is based on a research that she did in a primarily British and white demographic, and she found out that a lot of them use things like the jokes and everything to cover up that topic. So that was mostly her findings, and like I said, it was a British and white demographic. And the second one was another study conducted by Sri in 2016, and she went through the angle of linguistic playfulness, and creativity by the expressions that is used in menstruation. And the languages that she used was English and Spanish. And once again, that was a mostly primarily white demographic. And the next one is these are the non-Western languages. Now, this was a corpus-based research on menstrual expressions that gauges the level of politeness that exists within these expressions. So, all of these studies actually go through it in a different way. One finds the playfulness, one finds politeness. So, it's all different angles of the language use. And another one in an African language society, which is Kangaroo, they found that euphemisms, that is once again metaphors, relating to royalty and fertility were found in that. So that was something that was unique to their society. So my theoretical framework is this research will be based on Lakoff and Johnson's 1980s theory of conceptual metaphors. So it's a theory in cognitive linguistics that believes that metaphors are not limited to merely poetic or rhetorical interpretations, but is also a cognitive manifestation of structuring, restructuring, and even creating reality. So these are a few of the principles in which I will abide by. The first one is that a conceptual metaphor is a systematic set of correspondence between two domains of experience. For example, now if you say the metaphor time is money, okay, so time is the abstract domain, while money is the materialistic domain, so the concrete domain per se. So it actually maps the perception of one domain into another domain. Okay, so that is something that I attempt to do even with the menstrual expressions. Then the next one is metaphors occur not only in language but also in thought. So now conventionally we think that metaphors, we explicitly use it in language, in things like poetry and when we are writing or anything, that's something we explicitly do. But in this theory they say that no, it's a cognitive and subconscious process as well. We think about time as money, subconsciously. Okay, so metaphors speak to a subconscious process in humans. Then metaphors are grounded in bodily experience. That means we metaphorically we express things that we physically go through. And the last one is metaphors should not be seen as arbitrary linguistic expressions, but as reflections of experiences, values, culture, and context-induced factors, which is again what I'm going to study within the Sri Lankan context. So, additionally, for the purpose of the research, it will be viewed through the extremistic labels, which I explained to you all. So, the methodology and data collection. So, the research participants will be administered a questionnaire consisting of both closed-ended questions for nominal and ordinal variables and open-ended questions that help gain in-depth insight of the participants. So, I'll be collecting the linguistic expressions that different participants use. And through this, I will accomplish the goal of gaining an understanding of the original menstrual experiences of each individual respondent and interpret the data in accordance with the theoretical framework which I have outlined. And my sample, considering the demographic that I am taking, which is those who identify as Sri Lankan women who are legally adults. And besides this factor, I will not be having any restrictions based on the culture, religion or anything like that, because I want to ensure as much diversity in my participants as possible. So these are characteristics like ethnicity, language, age and religion are all the things that I will be taking into consideration when interpreting my data. So since some groups may be minorities, this may lead to less representation, so the sampling will be a bit disproportionate. So the data collected will be analyzed based on the examination of different menstrual expressions through the principles of the proposed theoretical framework, which is the conceptual metaphor theory, and the contextualization of the expressions based on factors such as language, ethnicity, religion, culture, and mitigation level. So due to the nature, these are my limitations. Due to the nature of the topic, there may be some reluctance from individuals to participate in the questionnaire, leading to challenges in the process of data collection. Furthermore, as most participants communicate in different languages, there may be a lack of understanding due to language barrier when during the questionnaire process. And as aforementioned, there has been no previous research of a similar nature conducted in a localized context. So drawing similarities or differences that are closer to home would not be a possibility. And there's one more limitation, the fact that I am aiming primarily towards Sri Lankan women. So if I had taken men also into consideration, their perception about it, it would have led to a more nuanced discourse. So ethical considerations, the participants will be informed of the research, and they are all legal consenting adults, and are expected to take part voluntarily. The research will maintain participant confidentiality with no identities being disclosed. So this is the timeline of my research and the structure of my thesis. And these are